And good morning. How's everybody doing? It's November 12th, 2020, 11:04 a.m. I'm 4 minutes late this morning. Apologize. Been busy researching, looking at all of this great stuff that's coming out, and wanted to focus our attention this morning on something that's very timely and in the news, and that is the hammer. The hammer, this mysterious computer that can work wonders. Used to be, and I don't know if it maybe still is, but used to be a very, very top secret uh, location in Fort Washington, Maryland. And just so happens I grew up in Fort Washington, Maryland, so I know exactly where it is. And I was a little amused that the great Kirk Wiebe referred to it as being on the Eastern Shore, because those of us that live here in the Southern Maryland area, we're called the Western Shore in geography books and whatnot, but nobody ever really knows where we are. It's like Maryland doesn't have a Western Shore. What are you talking about? But that's us, between the Chesapeake Bay and the Potomac River, and it's directly south of Washington. So you think, well, wait a minute, Maryland doesn't have west, it just turns into Virginia, right? Well, anyway, that's us. Western Shore, not Eastern Shore. I got a couple things queued up I want to share with you this morning on this subject of the hammer, as soon as I make sure we're all connected here. Hello, Pete and Maui Kinsey. Mighty Mouse. Not now. Tim, hey, Tim. Great. Great to have you with us, Tim. And Tyrone, good morning. Good morning, Arthur. And Eek. We got to get the Osprey Band back together soon. Hey, you know what? I got great news. Tomorrow night, Friday night, planning on having a special little musical show with none other than Norman Smith. Norman Smith, the great guitarist, singer that we enjoy so much on YouTube at his channel. So maybe we'll do a duet or two. Who knows? But that's something to look forward to. Also tonight, don't forget the trio tonight. Dr. Hamamoto. And we'll see what he has to say about the hammer. Hammer and Hamamoto. Professor, we look forward to it. It's always such a great treat to have you. And George Webb, the incredible investigative journalist who has a mind like a whole library full of encyclopedias and ties things together for all of us in an amazing way. Well, we're going to find out what he thinks as time goes on in the mysterious election of 2020. Okay. Well, the hammer. I'm going to start, if you don't mind, by playing the great and amazing Kirk Wiebe, W-I-E-B-E, his explanation, which is extracted from their show this past Tuesday, in which there's a very maybe 2-hour version of this. It's called the Roundtable Discussion, and you can find it at larouchepack.com. But this is a portion of it that I think is very worthwhile, because we're talking about a true expert, a former NSA for decades, and then he became a whistleblower and left the agency in protest against the agency's failure to prevent 9/11. So hang on a second. I truly enjoy using Switcher Studio. It is enabled me to do things that I never thought I'd be able to do. So here we go.
pursue. You may have heard of the Scorecard and Hammer, a computer-based, software-based cheating method of cheating, wherein the reports that are being reported to the state level that contain the count of the vote is changed as it's being transmitted over the internet. That's not really new technology, changing things in real time as they go over the internet. That technology's been around 15 years, maybe even 20 years. So it's nothing new. It's just that the application of it against our national election process and against the American people is what's new and absolutely illegal. In any case, what I want to do before I get too into the different types of fraud, I'd like to give you just a little quick background about this Hammer and Scorecard. First of all, this whole cheating going on before us is not one means of cheating. There are 4 or 5 involved, and I'll talk about those a little bit more in a minute. But the one that everyone's hearing about, besides mail-in ballots and ballot stuffing, is this Hammer and Scorecard. That technology is really not new. That technology's been around probably about 14 years or so, I would say. But it was designed as a tool, a weapon to be used in the war against terror. And that was the purpose originally. But in February 2009, and the names we hear associated with this activity, this illegal activity, are James Clapper, former Director of National Intelligence. He's been former CIA. He actually teamed up with John Brennan, head of CIA, who wasn't initially head of CIA in 2009, but was in the high levels of intelligence, to make a copy of the Hammer Scorecard capability and use it in a clandestine, hidden way in a valid U.S. government facility on the eastern shore of Chesapeake Bay in the state of Maryland at a location called Fort Washington, Maryland. And there is a secret compartmented facility at that location. Now, it is said to have operated there. When the whistleblower on the Hammer and Scorecard came forth, his name is Dennis Montgomery. When he saw this happen, and he developed this technology, he couldn't live with himself, and he attempted to blow the whistle. People didn't want him to blow the whistle. People in high positions of power during the Obama administration wanted to squelch or stop Montgomery from getting his word out. And that worked for a long time. And one of the steps that they used was to put Montgomery under a gag order. And that even predates the time that Brennan and Clapper took the technology illegally to use it for illegal purposes. He was put under the State Secrets Act so that Dennis could never talk about the hardware and software capabilities he had built. So Dennis, you have to understand, is under the threat of prosecution if he violates the classification, the classified information access documents he has signed, and also the one for the State Secrets Act. People say, why didn't he come forth sooner? He was gagged. And when he finally does come forth in 2015, he goes to the FBI and gives them 47 hard drives full of evidence. Comey James Comey is the head of the FBI at that time, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. And so Montgomery tries to use different means to get this made known to good people, people who believe in the law, in government, but he couldn't do it. And he had to be careful about what he said because of the legal threats sitting on top of him. And so let me explain to you 1 minute, very short explanation of how the hammer and this software called Scorecard works.
All right, I'm going to stop Kirk Wiebe for a minute, so I just want to check back with the chat room, which I can't see without stopping him, and see how you guys are doing. I think what we've just learned about, which I didn't know about, this whistleblower named Dennis Montgomery, but that he's been working behind the scenes to try to expose the idea that this hammer and scorecard technology has been illegally taken and copied by Clapper and Brennan. And that appears to be what we're facing today. So, sorry about the hum. I think it's from the... All right. So, yes, I see you guys are picking up on all this, and fantastic. So, David Underdown's here. You are really working hard to expose everything, and you I think you're another George Webb in the making, David. You and Addie are just doing fabulous work. Bravo, bravissimo. So that's where we're at in the idea. So now, get out your notebook and your pen and write down notes as to how the hammer and how the scorecard work, because then you can explain that to people that are skeptical, or just say, hey, look at John's show this morning. But you need to understand it yourself, because this is, to me, bringing down the hammer is bringing down the CIA. You know, just think about how the National Security Act of 1947 has been tolerated all this time. You know, the powers that be just didn't want to attack its constitutionality. But when you have created a poison pill for American democracy, for our republic, for the rule of law, and then you try to force that poison pill into the throats of the American electorate, then you have proven that this National Security Act in its inception was unconstitutional and needs to be stricken from the books of the laws of this nation. That's what we can do with this hammer. You understand what a hammer is? It's Thor's tool. When things are going wrong, you know, he throws his hammer. Not to destroy good people, no, to right the world back into its proper civil status. Well, they thought they could just grab that symbolism of the hammer and use it, you know? And it makes me wonder about Tom DeLay, you know, the termite exterminator of Texas, when he was making a lot of noise back in the 80s, and I don't remember what he was running for, but he appropriated the song If I Had a Hammer. And I've just been thinking, you know, Maybe he was referring to this thing over in Fort Washington as a secret weapon, because he certainly was no Pete Seeger type. All right, but that's just me. That's my mind, and I certainly could be wrong. No, nailed it, huh? Yeah, I think it's true. I think this could be the answer to McDuff's quest to smash the CIA. They took down my channel, but they can't take down my purpose. And I don't really want to use a hammer. I just want you guys to just stand down. Quit spying on us. Quit trying to run our lives. Stand down. Trust the American people. We do a hell of a lot better job than you have. Screwing up every damn thing, from the Bay of Pigs to whatever the hell you're doing now. Brennan and Clapper. All right, let's get back and get into the details of how this hammer thing works.
The hammer part of this two-part system is what opens doors on the internet. It controls switches on the internet. Everything on the internet goes through a switch, and it's routed according to the address of the data you're sending down the internet, whether it's you sending an email, a congressman sending a Word document. All data is packetized, put into little pieces of information, and they all have addresses. They're like little bugs going down the internet. And if you only open one or two pieces, you can't do that. Your system, your computer will say it's a corrupt file or there's data missing. It won't know what to do with it. So all the parts of an email, all the packets of a Word document must arrive, not necessarily exactly at the same point in time, but within a period of time. And your computer knows how many packets there are and when the last one arrives. So once they've all arrived, it will show up in your email queue as an email with a Word document or whatever. You can click on it and read it. And that's the way the internet works. Well, guess what? When the election process is reporting votes, they do the same thing. They take numbers, put them in a document of some type, a format, could be an Excel spreadsheet. It's up to the various states, and they send it to the state level to be part of the final total for that state. Now, when that report is sent over the internet from the counting machines, and you need to know the counting machine, at least of all the voting process, is connected to the internet for this reporting purpose. That's why it is connected to the internet. But it's not secured internet. And so a device, a program can come in, and I'm going to give you this metaphor, this illustration of what's happening. Imagine you are driving down a major highway. It may be I-95 in the United States over here on the East Coast, and a very famous route for going north and south. It may be the German Autobahn. It may be some other, but I'm talking about a modern highway with multiple lanes of traffic going both directions. That's the internet, because really, traffic, these little packets go both directions. Some are going out, some are coming in, and being transmitted all over the world accordingly to their addresses that I just mentioned, according to their addresses. And the switches know the addressing scheme. So they are the gatekeepers that open a lane there, close a lane there, open one there, and everything it's amazing, but it's not rocket science. It's logical and it's understandable. It's actually quite simple. And so here's what happens. The hammer opens up the switches and routes for the scorecard portion. So your car is driving down the internet. Think of that as a packet of information. And you're part of a voting total report. So you've got some numbers or partial numbers in your packet, and the other 300 packets behind you, they also have numbers. So the scorecard reaches out, grabs your car packet, opens the door, takes that data out. An algorithm computes the difference between Trump and Biden, for example, or a senator and some other senator of opposing parties. And as long as the differential between the two is 3% or less of the total, the scorecard will take votes away from Trump, put them in the Biden column, and debit the Trump. So there's not really more total votes at that point, but they are switched from Trump to Biden. The door is shut, the car is put back into the network. In this case, we're talking packets, and sent on its way. Now, what I just did, what I just told you about, happens in microseconds, so that no one is waiting. They don't even notice it. We all know that when you send an email to someone, it doesn't arrive in 1 second. It takes 10, 20, 30 seconds because of the switching an email has to go through as it makes its journey down the internet through these switches. So no one knows the better. The vote total is changed on the fly, and this is happening in multiple states across this nation. And so it's one of the other methods of cheating. Now, you have heard about the Dominion.
So now he's going to move on and describe the second method of fraud. He has listed 5 methods of fraud in his presentation on LaRouche PAC at their website. You can watch the whole thing. He then goes on to describe how the Dominion works and why it's different from the hammer and scorecard. And then 3 additional means of cheating that he finds in play here. It's a fascinating account by a real expert, and something I think that any court would have to listen to. This man knows his stuff, he has his credentials, he has the experience, and he can testify as an expert in the field of computer security and the CIA's operations. So I think we've got expert number 1 right there. And I'm not going to play the rest of this great presentation. I do invite you to get over to LaRouche PAC and watch the whole thing. Let me get back over here. All right. Well, thanks for hanging in there and listening to that, and understand, that it really is not that hard to explain when you think of it as a car driving down the interstate, and suddenly the car gets pulled over and the contents are pulled out, exchanged for different contents, and sent on its way so fast that nobody can see it, the exchange. And, well, guess what? Some people have seen how it works, and the next portion I want to add. Sorry, I'm too much at once. Hang on. Let me see if I have this up here. Yeah, okay. Now, consider the idea that we just heard, that there is an algorithm that kicks in the scorecard program, that when certain limits, 3% within those limits, then the program kicks in and does it's magic, shifting votes from one to the other. Well, I wanted to share this excerpt from another expert, and this is Dr. Shiva, the candidate for Senate in Massachusetts, who is an expert also in many fields, one of these great polymath minds. So he did a series of, well, he did a long video that has been broken into parts and put up on Twitter recently. And I think I saw this courtesy of Connie Bevan, who does such great work. So shout out, Connie. Bless you. Thank you for all you do. Support Connie at her Patreon and take advantage of the opportunity to read the transcripts of all the George Webb shows, which have now been taken down from YouTube, but you can still get access to the content courtesy of the great Connie Bevan. Thank you, Connie. All right, now let's turn our attention to Dr. Shiva for a minute, and sorry about that. And Dr. Shiva will be illustrating one county to illustrate what he sees in a number of counties across the country that may very well be the visual aid that the jury needs to understand what Kirk Wiebe just said. So let's have a listen.
When you really bring Trump's votes, what we think the pattern should be around the straight party vote line, you find out about 20,000 votes were taken from Trump and 20,000 votes were given to Biden for a 40,000 Biden lead in the Oakland early voting. Okay, just one county. So that's what you see here. Now, more importantly, if you notice, I've drawn these orange lines. So what you notice is this phenomenon, if you actually look below 20%, Trump was actually getting more votes than Republican candidates, right? All the way up to 20%. You see he was getting close to 7% more votes than his other Republican counterparts.
I'm going to stop Dr. Shiva here because he has previously explained how this chart works, and I want to just give you my interpretation. The red line in the middle that says 0%, it is labeled straight Republican Party score. That means those voters who vote straight Republican, and that is scored there at 0 because what we're determining is what's the variation from the straight Republican Party score. That's why he says that if you look in the left at the y-axis, you see that there's a 10% above there, and that yellow line that he's drawn, orange line, the dotted line, is what he's talking about, showing that these little blue dots, which each one is a precinct in Oakland County, each one of those blue dots is part of the description of what turns into this yellow dotted line. If you see that, what that does is draw a center point through that data. So he's saying that, and now just to explain the bottom axis, the y-axis, that means in each precinct, what is the percentage of people that are Republicans? So if it's 0%, then you're over to the left, and if it's 100%, it would be to the right. But the chart doesn't go that far. So those are the two axes. The red line is significant in that it shows you what the average middle of the road straight Republican Party vote would show in this chart. Okay.
But for some reason, which we'll talk about, right at 20%, it looks like his vote counts start getting linearly reduced. And if you look at this curve, and I've looked at lots of curves, Benny, you've seen a lot of these curves, Phil, right? Any one of us who's in the pattern analysis business, when you see this, it's immediately, if you look at these, you say something's up, okay? This is too structured, right? Too perfect.
Yeah.
What is that, Benny?
Too perfect.
Too perfect, okay? We in data analysis, pattern analysis, if you're in AI, you look for features like these because it lets you build it, an algorithm, right? This is easy. So this beautiful curve hits flat and boom, it drops in a nice linear fashion, as though an algorithm was there. As you went across, votes were getting cut by Trump. And that's what we see here. And remember, we've talked about it. The election systems, going back to Debo, right, Benny? They have the feature of being able to manipulate vote counts from one person to another. It's called the weighted race feature. So you see it here. Now, is it only in Oakland County in early voting? Well, let's look here. Here's election day voting. Right, Phil, this is election day we're looking at. And you see the same thing. Election day, there's around 20,000 votes. 10,000, Trump's votes are reduced by 10,000, and Biden's votes were increased by 10,000 here. But look at this pattern. Same thing. It's around 7%, and boom. Okay? Slope looks pretty damn close, doesn't it, Phil, Benny?
Yep.
Looks very, very close. Okay? On a different time. The reason this is important is this is in one time period. So temporally, we're going to look at temporal, which means by time, and spatially. So temporally, we're looking at one event before election day, early voting, and this is after early voting. You see the same feature. All right. Now, let's go into a different county. Is this only in Oakland? By the way, Oakland is one of the biggest counties. And by the way, I want to put both of them together. You see that in this, when you add it all up, 60,000 votes increased Biden's lead, right? So a total of 30,000 votes were reduced for Trump and 30,000 votes were increased for Biden. So Biden's margin increased by 60,000 votes. All right, so that's Oakland County. Now let's look at a different county. Again, spatially, we're going to a different place and a different time, early voting, Macomb County. Here there were 28,000 votes. 14,000 were taken from Trump, 14,000 were given to Biden. And what do you see here? Well, in this case, Trump actually does even better. He's almost at, what does that look like? About 12%, Benny? 12%?
12%.
And then here, this kicks in around at 25%.
Yeah.
Okay, but same sort of slope. Okay, so they start eating Trump's votes at this point, but he's doing better in these counties by 12% more than the Republican Party candidates. Okay, he's doing better. Now let's go over here to Macomb County on election day. Okay, same feature you see. In fact, he's doing really good here, up to 22%. Right, Phil? That's what that looks like.
22.
Right, in the election day voting. All right. Yeah, it looks like 22% on election day. In the non, more democratic.
Phil is telling us. I think he's looking at the graph. What'd you say, Phil?
Well, I was looking at the export. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. And then again, it drops precipitously when right around here. Okay, but same feature, same algorithm is in place. By the way, when we say same algorithm, it can be weighted for populations, et cetera. Now we look at, again, the same thing here. So total, when you look at Macomb County, a total of 16,500 votes were taken away from Trump. By the way, these are minimum. And 16,500 votes were given to Biden. So a total of 33,000 lead. So if you take 33 plus 60, we're up to 93,000 votes between Macomb and Oakland County. Now,
all right. So you see, Dr. Shiva is showing us a statistical pattern that I think anybody can recognize once you get it explained. Now, he is not talking about the hammer and the scorecard specifically, and what I think he's referring to is the Dominion fraud, which is, as Kirk Wiebe can distinguish them, not something that's based at the hammer, the supercomputer itself, but rather in the voting machines themselves. So by one way or by another, and then we have three other ways that are mentioned by Kirk Wiebe. Those 5 ways are identified by subject matter expertise. So the trial lawyer now has a substantial amount of expert testimony in the toolbox that can be called upon. And this is a foundation for those people that are into statistical analysis and computers and, even economics, I think, comes into this. That as a lawyer, to get expert testimony into a tribunal, you have to satisfy the quality test, sometimes called the McNaughton rule, to prove to a court, A, that your proposed witness is an expert. That means that he or she has special training, expertise, or experience doesn't have to be a PhD, as long as they've done it. Well, that's the first prong. The second prong, it has to be in a field that is generally accepted in the scientific or whatever community as a legitimate field of expertise. So I don't think anybody would be admitted as an expert in reading somebody's head by phrenology today. That is not an accepted science. So is statistical analysis an accepted science? You bet it is. Can this do something for the country that perhaps nothing else could have done, and that is to actually bring down the CIA at least in its domestic and most frightening persona. It's the CIA that spies on each of us to make sure that we don't interfere with the CIA's program, whatever that is. And it's pretty creepy because it certainly does have a lot to do with the Atlantic Council and a lot to do with the World Economic Forum and a lot to do with the Democratic Party's agenda for a very, very dark winter. All right, let me look over here and check back with you guys. So that's my pitch for today, guys, is do support the work of Kirk Wiebe and Bill Binney at LaRouchePAC.com and Harley Schlanger and his daily report at the same location. I will have Harley on my show next week. We are scheduled for Wednesday the 18th at 11 a.m., so you might want to mark your calendars now for that. I'll be on the road next week, but I'm going to be broadcasting my Mindfields in the mornings despite that. So don't forget Wednesday, a special show with Harley Schlanger. That's November 18th at 11 a.m. Hey, Jerome, I'm so glad to see you, man. Jerome's been a great colleague here with us since he lived down in Arizona, and now he's over in the Netherlands. Philip Barton Key shot dead by Nichols. Wasn't Philip Barton Key was the one that was actually in the British Army against, fighting against the revolution? One of those Keys was an uncle, I think, of Francis Scott. Well, I am terribly unhappy about the sad fact that we have a debate between Dr. Shiva and RFK Jr., and I've I've addressed that on my Twitter yesterday. I would like very much to have them both on the same page with regard to agenda items, but it's not going to happen, and we just have to remember that anybody in the Kennedy family they cannot speak frankly. I think we just have to be as understanding and kind and gentle as we can, but not to allow them to have the podium where they may be forced to feed us some disinformation. And I'm sorry to say that, but I have to take Dr. Shiva's side in that one, just because I think, as far as I can see, Shiva is giving it to us straight, and I cannot accept the idea of the Paris Accords coming back into American law. So, I don't want that climate change agenda that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is unfortunately tied to. He does. He tells us a lot of good stuff. That's true. Shiva dude is ambitious. Well, he is ambitious because it's just a question of whether you like his program or not. I mean, if you got somebody that you is saying what you want, is giving you the confirmation bias that you want this and this and this, and they're saying, here it is, I'm giving it to you, then it's good for them to be ambitious, because that way you'll get your agenda attended to. At least you can hope that. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that because of comments about everybody has differences, and some of them are really, really unfortunate and have to do with the fact that, hey, there really is a deep state. They really do have bad guys that really do bad things. There really is a health alteration committee. There really is a Murder Incorporated. There really is a evil force in these secret societies that will take a sword and shove it right up your anus while you're still alive. So let's take that seriously and not get into a bunch of silly disputes while we're trying to save this nation. Anyway, back to the statistical analysis, back to the case in Michigan, back to the work. Have a good day.